Stop feeling guilty about making a change. You grew a successful business, but now that business needs to come to a close. Don't grieve it, celebrate what you've done. This is what my conversation with Sharon Calle is all about. She is the founder of Luminosa Creative. She went from being an artist to an art teacher to running an art studio, and now she is a website designer. Let's get into Sharon's story.
Sure.
Sharon Calle, I'm so happy to have you here on Second Act Success. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I'm so happy to be here.
We connected on LinkedIn, we've chatted before, and you have so many different acts that I think will be really interesting to our listeners. But let's start off where your career began.
I've definitely had a squiggly creative career. I started out after high school going to school for illustration and graphic design. So I went to art school. And then after art school, I found that it was really difficult to be a full-time illustrator. It was like all freelance, there's no in-house job. And I was really burnt out from just spending 4 years making hand-drawn illustrations. I also, at that point, was still very much in my shell. I grew up a very shy, introverted person, but like I had an extreme social anxiety, even at that point in college. So after I finished college, I was like, okay, I need to do some jobs that push me out of my comfort zone, force me to be sociable and like outgoing and put myself out there. So I did a whole bunch of random jobs. If you saw my list of jobs, you would be like, okay, I've had more than just a few acts. Like I've had a lot of acts. But like some of the random jobs I had were I was a canvasser for Greenpeace in New York. So that was like one summer in my 20s. So I'd stand on the street and have to approach strangers, introduce myself, share Greenpeace campaigns, and get people to sign up to be supporters. And it was so scary, but I think that's the first place where I picked up just sales skills. So that was like something that pushed my boundaries. Another thing was I ended up getting into teaching, which I never thought I would do. Hated being in front of the classroom as a kid, like when I had to present. I hated talking in front of the public, like public speaking. I was so anxious. But my mom was a teacher. She had a lot of teacher friends who were like, oh, why doesn't Sharon try teaching? Use her art degree to be an art teacher. So I was like, hey, that's actually a really good idea. It's something I haven't tried. It scares me. I became a teacher. I ended up being a public school teacher for many years in northern New Jersey. Then as I was teaching, a lot of the parents of my students would ask me, do you do on the side, do you do art lessons? Do you do painting birthday parties? And at that time, I was working full time in a public school, elementary school art. And so I was like, I don't do that, but I could. So I was watching some TV show about startups and I was watching like all these stories of small business owners. And I always had the entrepreneurial spirit ever since I was little, but I never thought I would be like a small business owner. I always wanted to be an artist. So then I'm like, why don't I try this? So while I was working full time, I started doing art lessons. I started doing painting parties. And then it just grew from there. And then about a few months into my first year of business, it was just a side hustle. I switched teaching jobs and I thought it was going to be like the job. Great location compared to where I lived. It just seemed perfect, but it was the absolute opposite of what I imagined. It was just a bad situation. You'll know what I mean when I say like a toxic workplace. And it was all about the administration and just the setup of the school. So I could not like get out of there fast enough to preserve my health, preserve my mental health. At the time, my business was growing on the side. So I would teach all day at this toxic job. I would then go to after school classes, hold them in community spaces, and just grow. And on the weekends, I was busy hosting parties at people's homes. And so there came a point where I had to decide, I'm going to stay in this permanent, safe position that I hate, or I'm going to take a chance on this small business. And I have no idea where it's going to lead. I don't know if it's going to replace my income. It was scary. So I quit my job and I went full into my business, like 100%. And then it just grew from there. But if you told me a couple years into my business that I would have a brick-and-mortar at a prime location in a small downtown in New Jersey, we would be booked out. We'd be hosting 8 events a weekend in addition to classes during the week. I would have people asking me for more and more, to the point where I got so burnt out that what I had created, it was great, but it was also not sustainable. I wouldn't have even imagined what it could have grown into.
Let me ask you here. I just want to pop in. So you began this business mobily, like just
I
taking
did.
your classes out and about. And what made you decide to go brick and mortar? Because I've done both with my franchise
Okay.
I owned. I was mobile,
Yeah.
doing the same thing, classes in different
Mhm.
locations, and then I went the brick and mortar routes.
Yeah.
So I am just curious what made you decide to take that leap? Because that's a lot of overhead.
It was, and looking back, like, I would not have chosen such a gigantic space. Like, the space was 2,500 square feet.
Mine was
It
2050.
was, like, the largest space, like, on the street, but I had a really big vision for it, but looking back, I wouldn't have chosen something that big. But the reason why I chose it is because my classes, my after-school classes were getting really booked out, and I was using a community space at the time that only allowed for public classes. I couldn't host any private parties there.
Oh.
So all the parties, I had to like bring everything to people's homes, which was great. But some people, they didn't want a party in their home. They're like, I want to just go to your space. I don't want to clean up my house. I don't want to worry about it. And they know that everything's taken care of. Parties became like almost our main income, followed by summer camp and then after school classes, paint and sip, stuff like that. But the funny thing is that you would think, okay, brick and mortar means like you've made it. Okay, you have a full schedule, money's coming in, people are happy, people are asking for more, but I was getting so burnt out that I didn't know how much longer I could do it. So then our lease was coming to an end after 2 years, and the pandemic happened. And that timing, my lease just happened to be up literally the month that the pandemic happened in March 2020. So
Wow.
hopefully, like, I didn't have to then pay for space, but then it was just like everything was shut down. I wasn't doing any classes. Wasn't doing anything. I took a little mini sabbatical and just reevaluated what direction I wanted to go in. So then I started another business that was connected. I opened an online Shopify store with 200 products, starting small, just kidding. Then I want to keep in touch with my studio families by offering them subscription art boxes, art kits that were mail order, gifts, craft items, just fun, crafty things that tied into what I did at the studio. So I tried that. I also had an Etsy store at the same time. So I balanced both to see which was more lucrative, which I liked better. And I found that I did not enjoy having a product based business. And more power to the people who do because there's a lot involved. With mine, some of the items were just, I was reselling items retail, I was getting them wholesale and reselling them. But other things, I would be curating a whole art box, typing up the curriculum, laying it out on Canva, nice PDFs that you could print out as instructions, putting paint in little containers, curating these gift boxes. And it was so fun. And I was really thankful that I had that to keep me busy during the pandemic. But I found out that I was making no money.
For all the hours that you're
I know.
spending, that's a lot to curate.
And, like, my home, like, a large section of, like, our home became just, like, this storage of all these art supplies and just, like, and it was crazy. It was like a warehouse. But it was a great experience, but it was something that I found that I tried and I didn't wanna do anymore.
Maybe you felt at that point that service-based businesses was where your heart was. You can do a service,
Yeah.
you can offer something, but the products is just a whole nother level.
Yeah, it was just I mean, it was a lot, and I just didn't enjoy it as much.
Mhm.
During the pandemic, I also did some service-based offerings. I did online Zoom classes with I did Girl Scout workshops. I did some with PTAs and PTOs of schools. They wanted for Dr. Seuss draw Read Across America Day. We drew like the cat in the hat. I did canvas painting parties where I would ship the kit to them and then we would all get on a Zoom and like a 10-year-old party, we're painting dolphins. So I did do a lot of that as well, but I found that I really preferred the in-person. So then when the world started opening up again, at that point I had taken 18 months off from teaching in person and I was like, can I still do this? How am I not going to burn out again? So I was a little apprehensive because I didn't want to stretch myself so thin. I didn't want to overload my schedule the way I had at the studio when I was supporting retail rent. I started small. I started doing just in-home kind of pod classes that were art classes after school. Then I found some new community spaces to partner with. And then I grew back up again. And then I found that I was actually making more money than when I had the retail space. Because at
Mm.
that point, I had learned to charge a little bit more now that I knew what was all involved. I learned to be a little bit more confident about what I was charging. I learned that I wasn't competing with everybody. I was competing with a certain niche of clients who were looking for a certain type of art class. So I was actually making more money doing less classes. They were mobile, but I was partnering with community spaces. So that was really great. And so that was going really well. I did that for a couple years. But then at the end of 2023, I found that I was ready for a change. This is my big shift to whatever act this is, whatever number
Yes.
act it is. But that was for me one of the hardest things I went through because I had built something for 7 years and I loved it. The community loved it. But I also knew that I couldn't do it anymore. Like I knew I needed to do something new. I knew I wanted to be a creative again. I wanted to do design work. I wanted to have creative projects. But it was bittersweet because I felt a lot of shame around like quitting something, closing something that was profitable. And to someone else, they'd be like, oh, why would you stop doing that? You're making money and people are happy. But I felt like I couldn't do it anymore. So I had to step back, have a little reset, and just think about what I wanted to focus on doing with my skills, my creativity.
Sharon, can I ask you,
Mhm.
how did you feel in that scenario where you knew you didn't want to do it anymore compared to how you felt when you were teaching in that toxic environment? Were you getting similar feelings or was it just another burnout moment? What was it?
I think it was that I had taken it as far as I wanted to take it and I wanted to do something else with my life. I could have, if I had to, I could have kept doing it and just been like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'll just decide to be happy. I'm not going to think about all those other ideas I have, creative ideas. Like they'll just be there, but I just won't do them. But like for me, like it was, I had taken it to the point where I felt like I couldn't take it any further. And at that point, there was a lot of event promotion, selling seats. I was still doing all the teaching, but I felt like I wanted a new challenge. I wanted a new direction. I wanted to have creative projects that were challenging me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I did feel like it was bittersweet, the idea of shuttering my business and telling my customers, like, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do this anymore. But thank you so much for 7 years of following along. And I had students who I knew since kindergarten and they would grow up through the program. Some of them were my first clients or customers were students that I had taught in public school that came with me to my business. So then by the end of my business, they were in high school and they were like working as counselors in training at my summer camp, like helping me with the younger kids. So it was like I had been with them and they were still like into art and just like seeing them grow into young artists in high school and like having them help my younger students. That was like such an amazing full circle thing. And I also looked into the idea of selling my business because I did have a really great structure, especially since it was mobile at that time. You didn't need a brick and mortar, but I felt like it was really hard to find the right person. And I'm like, I'm not just going to sell this just to anybody. It was so personal for me. It was like my baby, my business that I created from scratch. So I didn't end up selling it. I had a few leads and looked into them, but I just made peace with the fact it was just a moment in time and it ended, but it made space for something new. Yeah, I had to mourn it a little bit before I moved on.
You do. And I did the same thing. I just sold my franchise last year and it
Yeah.
was the same thing of, wow, this is a huge part of me. I
Mhm.
spent so much blood, sweat, and tears in building it. And now I was able to sell it and give it to someone else. But either
Yeah.
way, you're saying goodbye to it. And so it's
Yeah.
definitely a bittersweet moment.
Mhm.
But I think that you can be so proud of what you built. I love the fact that you are so self-aware to know when it is time to move on. You knew that with teaching, you knew this with your business. You just had other creative endeavors that you wanted to test out. And I think
Mhm.
that's exciting. And we only get this one life. So why not try everything that we're thinking about? And I feel
Yeah.
that you're the type of person who would just hold on to that idea in their head and never really let it go. So you had no
Mhm.
choice but to just sell this and go for this next thing.
And that was like a blessing and a curse of being an entrepreneur and having that mindset that like
Yes.
you have these ideas knocking on your door and they're not going to really stop knocking until you explore them. And I don't know if it's just like the creative mindset we have or just the growth mindset, we can see opportunities where someone else might not see anything.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. It's super scary. So yeah, so when I took that time off after I finished my last summer camp, I looked back over my time as a business owner and I thought about what I really enjoyed. And I found that one of the biggest, most important tools for my small business was my website. And it hadn't always been a good one, actually, because when I started, I was teaching full time. I launched my business on the side. So I just threw together like a WordPress website. And I found that it wasn't really a good platform for me at the time. It wasn't intuitive. It was time consuming to edit. I'd have a full schedule and then I'd be up late at night trying to like add stuff to my website and being frustrated. So then a couple years into my business, I discovered Squarespace and it's a drag and drop builder. And the great thing is you don't have to be like an expert web designer or you don't have to know code to use it. The funny thing is like I have a design background and I took web design classes in college, but at the time I said to myself, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to be a web designer." But it wasn't until I was a small business owner and I understood the importance of a website like as a tool for saving time, for bringing in money, for answering people's questions clearly so they don't have to be messaging you, wondering about your program. Once I got my Squarespace website up and it was so easy to edit, it just evolved with my business. And I was always testing out different programs and services, finding what worked, finding what didn't, niching down. Because at first, when I started my art studio, I was trying to be everything for everyone. And people would ask me, "Oh, can you do this?" I'm like, "Sure." "Can you do this?" And I was like doing all these things. And then once I switched back to mobile, I was like, I'm just going to focus on this and this. Do that really well, have it be my core offering. And it was great. It was such a relief because I didn't have to keep reinventing the wheel. I found that web design was something that always was a tool that my business needed. It was so helpful. It helped broaden business. So then I'm like, oh, maybe I could do web design for business owners. So then I decided to niche down to women business owners. I mostly work with service-based businesses, but I also started offering search engine optimization as an add-on, which at first, a year ago when I launched my web design business, I thought, oh, I'm going to learn all about SEO so that I can offer that to my web design clients. Now I find that people are coming to me just for SEO, and some of them are on all different platforms like Shopify, Wix. So I'm now doing SEO as like a standalone because people are coming to me for that as well, which I didn't expect a year ago when I was like, oh, let me just dive into SEO. It was a real eye opener because I didn't know any of that with my first business. I'm like, what is all that? I didn't even know what SEO meant. I don't even think I had a Google business profile for the first few years of my art studio. And it was like an in-person area. Like I just did a certain area. So yeah, so just finding out about SEO, now helping women business owners with that, it's been so rewarding. And I feel like even though like I've done a lot of things in my squiggly career path, every experience I had, like I pulled something from it. Even jobs I hated, like even just I met my husband temping at an office job. Oh, really? So that's what I got in temping. I got my husband. Yes, you did. Jobs that scared me, jobs that pushed me. I feel like I took something from all of that, even though I didn't stay with them. So I've quit so many jobs in my life, but in doing so, I found the path that I really want to follow because I'm creating it myself.
That is so beautifully said. You are creating it yourself, and you probably learned so much just in this last year or so of building
Mhm.
your business of what you really enjoy. And even that
Mhm.
search engine optimization can be creative because you have to
Yeah.
figure out how to get those words on the page,
Mhm.
how to. So there's just such a level of creativeness in what you're doing. Congratulations on the business. Tell us the business name and how people can connect with you if they want to hire you for work or learn more about what you're doing.
Yeah, so my web design and SEO business is called Luminosa Creative, and you can go to luminosacreative.com. You can also look me up on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And my smallest offer is something like a Squarespace Power Hour, where if someone has an existing Squarespace website, they can book an hour with me. And whether they are updating branding, whether they're doing a redesign, whether they need help embedding some sort of third party application, like they want a booking system, that's like my smallest offer. I also do designer for the day. That's one day of whatever you want done with your website, and that can also include SEO. And then I do full custom web design. And then the same thing with search engine optimization. I offer something as small as a SEO power hour. And then from there, I have a full SEO service and I have a monthly SEO service if someone wants me to manage their SEO moving forward. And I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of different women business owners on their websites and SEO, everything from therapists to coaches to product-based businesses, designers, all kinds of things. So it's been a really great ride.
And it brings everything together because you're
Mhm.
speaking that same talk with your clients and
Yeah.
how you want them to show up with their business and why it's so important to have this
Mhm.
website beautifully designed, I'm sure, with your creative eye. And while we're talking about SEO, for listeners who might be listening thinking, I don't know what SEO is either, can you give us like a quick breakdown of what SEO is and why it's important for our businesses?
Yeah, SEO stands for search engine optimization. And it basically, the clearest way I can explain it is if you set your website up correctly so that it is easy to use for your client, they could find everything they want. There's a lot of content on there that tells about what you do and what you offer. Google's going to notice. They're going to notice also how long people spend on your website, if they're clicking around, if they are converting, which means they are becoming clients and they are clicking on buy this, or they're saying, okay, book this. So Google notices how much time they spend on your website as well. And all of those things will reward you in terms of how your website will rank, whether it shows up on the first page of Google, whether it shows up in the ideal spot is like the first 3 organic listings. SEO also has to do with if you have a local business, you want to show up in local search. So you have a Google business profile. When people are typing things up on the map, do you show up? It has to do with are other websites linking to your site saying, "Oh, this person knows something, they're an expert, I'm gonna link to them." So it's a whole package that has to do with everything that's connected to your website and how Google views it and reads it and how it shows up. But it's also not limited to just your website. It also all of your descriptions on social media, of your profile, where you might decide to host your events based on event platforms. If you're using a third party, which one of those has really great SEO? So definitely it's like a whole thing to look at, but it means that when people are searching for you, they're going to find you on the first page of Google. That is the ideal.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's really important, and as a business owner myself, to get that set up in the very beginning. And that is something
Mhm.
I did not do with my coaching business. With
Yeah.
Second Act Success, I waited a couple of years to really dive in and
Yeah.
make sure my website was set up. And that I wish I didn't do. I wish I had
Mhm.
known someone like you to help me set that up from the very beginning. So I think for
Yeah.
anyone who's listening now, if you're thinking about starting a business, reach
Mhm.
out to Sharon and or find out how you can set your website up the right way because that's
Mhm.
only going to help you find your ideal clients or customers faster, in my opinion.
Definitely. And I also, if anyone wants to chat with me, I offer a free 20 minutes discovery call. We can just chat about your goals, talk about where you are right now with your business or your website or SEO, and no obligation, just a chat.
I want to also talk about on top of Luminosa Creative, you started another business this past year. Tell us about that because it's such a brilliant idea and I just want to share it with everyone.
And it's funny because a year ago when I started my web design business, I thought that was like, okay, art studio for 7 years. Okay, take some time off, then web design. I had no idea I was going to even want to start a networking based business. I had never even been to a networking event
Oh,
until December of last year. So, December 2024, I went to my first networking event. I didn't even know what networking really was. I had done it for years in my studio just by talking to parents, but I'd never gone to a traditional, networking event. I didn't come from corporate. So I wasn't like aware of what it was going to be like. So I was nervous. I knew I had to share my business, my web design business, which was brand new at the time. And I didn't know what I was going to say. And I remember driving to it and being like nervous in the car and thinking, how am I going to put my words in the right order to share what I want to share? And so starting in December, I started exploring different networking events, and I found that some of them were overwhelming to me as an introvert. And the funny thing is, I had been a teacher for 15 years. I've stood on stages in front of 120 people, like showing them how to do paintings and instructing. But when it comes to being in a group and having to wait your turn to share your intro, it just, my anxiety like goes crazy. And I'm not hearing what the other business owners are saying when they're sharing. I'm just focused on, okay, what am I going to say when it's my turn and how are the words going to come out? And am I going to sound good?
Yeah.
I felt like a lot of events I went to were structured that way. Some other events I went to were like in very loud interior settings, restaurants or bars or just small spaces that you have a lot of people in there, it's going to get loud. And I found that I would find myself like going into the bathroom and like taking a little break just from the sensory overload and feeling overwhelmed. And also finding that it felt like speed networking and it felt like I was talking to all these people, but the conversations weren't that valuable. We didn't get to go that deep. A lot of times the conversations like would get interrupted by other people coming over, which happens when there's no structure. Envisioned what it would be like to be outside networking. And I like to go for my daily walks. I also am a big hiker and outdoor person. And I'm like, okay, what if we could be doing this on a walk? It would be a lot less stressful. So I started in May of 2025. I started Biz Bestie Walk. And so it's basically a 2-hour networking event where women entrepreneurs and business owners, we will meet at a location in a cute downtown. Right now it's in New Jersey and I host some in New York City. So we'll meet and we'll start with small group icebreakers. So either groups of 4 or 6. We'll go around the circle with something personal and fun. So instead of just jumping right into your elevator pitch, talking about your business, making it sound great, we start with something that's connecting on a personal level and we share our first name. Then we go around again, share our first name and our business, but keep it short. So it's something that's digestible, it's not overwhelming. Then we go for a 1-hour walk. And during that time, we pair up. So each woman gets to be with another woman for 15 minutes. So we share whatever we want to talk about, our businesses, about life. We switch every 15 minutes. So the goal is to get a conversations with 4 women business owners. And then after that, we end up at a coffee shop and we just have some more time to chat with anyone else we missed, connect some more. And it's just very personal. It's 2 hours of networking. It's all conversation. There's no speakers. There's no panel. There's no person talking about themselves for 45 minutes.
Just fun. Yeah.
Fine, that's just like a different structure. But my group is more about building community and building like connections that feel a little bit more authentic. People are going to remember you. And that's the point, because what is the point of going to large events, grabbing a whole bunch of business cards, and people can't even remember you because they didn't talk about anything that like sparked a memory? You know what I mean?
I'm nodding my head yes, because those are transactional networking events
Yeah.
where you don't take anything from it for the most part.
Yeah.
So it sounds like what you're creating is something where you're going to walk away with actually a new friend or two, or someone that you
Mhm.
can connect to and share contacts, partner,
Mhm.
help a little bit, and then continue that conversation.
And I've been sharing that it's introvert friendly networking. Everybody's welcome. Introverts. I consider myself an extroverted introvert. I love being social, but I also know when it's a point where, okay, I've had my quota. Now I need some quiet time or some alone time. So that feels really good because that's like the whole goal for
Mhm.
people to find community, to feel less alone. We all have the thing in common that we were either brave enough or crazy enough to become entrepreneurs. So you have to have a certain type of spirit to even
Mhm.
decide to start your own business. So I feel like that brings us all together. Like we're all cheering each other on. We're not going to be doubting each other and say, "Oh, how's that little thing you're working on?" Because when you talk to people from other backgrounds, like maybe whether it's family, friends, community, like they don't understand. They're like, I've actually had people ask me, "Okay, what's your day job or what's your real job?" And I'm like,
This is a
what is
yeah.
a real job anyway?
No.
If it's real to you, if it's supporting you and your family, if it's a way to make a living and also make that living on your own terms, I feel like that's a real job, you know?
Absolutely. That's a dream job.
So yeah, so it's been a really great adventure. And yeah, so I've been hosting walks all over North Jersey, a few in New York City. And then people are asking me for South Jersey, but right now I'm just hosting where I can drive to reasonably because I live in northwestern New Jersey. So the walks I'm hosting are, some of them are an hour from me, some are a lot further if they're in the city. But yeah, it's been great.
I'll link to that in the show notes for anyone who's in the New York, New Jersey area to come and follow along.
And I just wanted to share one more thing.
Yeah.
I know I've had a lot of stuff that I've shared in this episode, but I think the one takeaway that I would like to share is that it's taken me a long while to design a business that not only was profitable, obviously, because you need a business to pay some bills, but it's taken me a long journey to find out like really who I am and what kind of business supports the lifestyle that is the healthiest for me. And after doing my art studio for 7 years, and it was like super social, I was on all the time, performing all the time as a teacher on stage. It was draining overall because naturally I like to have more balance. So even just like when you're thinking about what type of business you want to do, key into what makes you tick and how you feel the healthiest, the most balanced, the most calm. And just make sure that when you're choosing a business, it fits into that. Because now that I have my meetings with my clients, I get to work with women business owners, but I also can work from home. And then I go on my networking walks with Biz Bestie Walks. So I have my social time. But now I feel like it's a lot more balanced where I'm not being overwhelmed by one thing, which it used to be just being a teacher and being on display all the time, which was great, but it wasn't great for me. So yeah, so as you're exploring your own journey, becoming a business owner or starting your own thing, yeah, really think about who you are and what makes you tick and try to plan a business that won't burn you out if possible.
And I love that advice so much. And I think what you're saying is so true. And you were able to be that perfect example of someone who took your passion, you took your art and you brought it into every aspect of your different roles and your businesses over the years. Would you say that's something that women should look out for? Is what do you enjoy? What is your passion? What is your hobby? You're proof positive that you can turn that into a profitable business.
Yeah, definitely. See how you feel about doing something a lot because you don't want to do something you love. And then if you do too much of it, it's a little bit overwhelmed. So think about it could even be something adjacent. Like, for example, my first love was illustration. So I still love like drawing and painting. I would never do that as a business, even though that's what I originally wanted to do. I wanted to be a full-time traditional artist. But looking at that now, like that is something I'm keeping just for me. So
That's
yeah.
brilliant.
You can try things out and they might not work, which is totally fine, but you're going to find something eventually that does work. And it's going to be the thing that like lights you up, that makes you excited. You're not going to have the Sunday scaries anymore on Sunday night. Like I used to have that all the time, anxiety about my lesson plan, observation, students getting crazy before Halloween, whatever. So all of that like anxiety, behavior, classroom management. I don't have any of that anymore. And I also try not to fill my schedule so much that I feel like I'm in that 40-hour a week. I also try to batch my work. So I try to take calls with clients on Mondays and Tuesdays. And then the rest of the week is left for project work, for Biz Bestie Walk. But I also try to build a schedule for myself that feels human. Because I think a 40-hour work week, like that was created a really long time ago. And I don't think it's appropriate anymore.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Not as realistic at all. No,
Yeah.
it's building your own schedule around what lights you up, what you can do so you can go on your walks and you can do
Yeah.
your art and you can have that, like you said earlier, your balance. And I think that's the most important thing. I'm so happy that you found that, Sharon, and that you're just growing these new two businesses so much and you're taking everything from your past and bringing it until now and your future. Congrats. It's so exciting.
I also want to say that, like, when I first discovered your podcast, when I first reached out to you, I listened to one episode. I can't remember the name of the woman you were with, but it was about like pivoting away from something you had built, the woman had built from scratch, and it was successful, it was profitable, but she was ready to move on and she gave herself permission to celebrate it and just move forward. And that episode impacted me because I hadn't had anyone to talk to about what I was going through. I didn't know anyone who had built a successful business and then decided, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore, but I'm not going to feel bad about it. I'm going to feel good about what I accomplished. So hearing that episode that you shared, yeah, it was really helpful to me because I was like, oh, like I should be celebrating those 7 years, not feeling bad that it's over, but just instead say this is something I'm now building on. Cause I would never be where I am today without those 7 years, that first business, all I learned. And someone recently told me when I had first started Biz Bestie Walk, they said to me, oh wow, that seemed to take off pretty quickly. And then I thought about it, I'm like, no, that's built on 9 years of being a business owner. That's why it took off. It didn't take off because it was a fluke, because it was just something new. It's built on 9 years of trial and error, failure, success. That's why it took off. So I just thought about that and then it felt really good.
I love that. Yep, there's no luck in business, right? It really is
Yeah.
putting in that hard work and knowing you're doing it for the greater good of your life and your well-being. And
Mhm.
there's so many great takeaways in this episode, in this conversation.
Mhm.
And I love that other episode really impacted you. And that's the whole
Mhm.
point, right? To hear stories from other women and say, if she can do it, I can do it. And
Yeah.
you're allowing that even with Biz Bestie Walk of women saying, yeah, we're all alike. We're on this walk now,
Mhm.
but we're talking about our businesses. And sometimes we are behind the screen all day and it can
Mhm.
be really lonely. When you reached out and we became friends online, like it's just so great to know that there's other women going through the same thing that we
Mhm.
are and to be able to support each other. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for everything that you've shared. I know a lot of listeners will be connecting with you, and I'll have all of the ways to do that in the show notes. But thank you so much. I wish you the best in all of this, and I can't wait to watch you just keep growing and succeeding with your businesses.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shannon. And I'm just so happy that I could be here and talk with you. And I'm looking forward to staying connected with you too.
Thank you for joining us. I hope you found some gems of inspiration and some takeaways to help you on your path to Second Act success. To view show notes from this episode, visit secondactsuccess.co. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Reviews only take a few moments and they really do mean so much. Thank you again for listening. I'm Shannon Russell, and this is Second Act Success.